Hey guys, Charlie Murphy here, playing another session of $1, $2, 6-max regular tables on Ignition. Our games are up and running, so let's jump right in. On the upper left-hand table, we're going to open Ace-10 suited from the cutoff. On the upper right-hand table, we're facing a 2.25x raise first in from the button. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet that pretty aggressively, about 14%, including all our suited Broadway hands like Queen-Jack suited. Upper left-hand table, we get 3-bet in position to a small size, a little bit less than 3x. We can go ahead and defend this with Ace-10 suited. Upper right-hand table, we'll go ahead and range bet on the Queen-10-7 two-tone board. And on the upper left-hand table, we're going to go ahead and check raise with our backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, as we can keep going after him pretty hard on quite a few turns. And that in-position raise tends to be a little bit on the weak side, at least from fish that actually raise and then call off too light. Regs will raise fold a bit too much. Either way, I'm obviously continuing. I think I'd rather just get this hand all in on the flop and not put myself in any kind of weird spots later in the turn. Although, actually, I've got draws dominated. I think it's so strong I can go ahead and just kind of flat call here. Not going to continue barreling in the upper left-hand table on that flush closing turn. I will call off here with my queens and the flush draw. I'm going to go ahead and move him all in as if I had a flush there on the upper left-hand table. Can fold him off a lot of stuff that doesn't have the, especially a lot of cards that don't have a diamond in them. I could have pocket eights for eights full. I could probably have a lot of pocket jacks for jacks full. Although that's mostly going to be 4-bet pre-flop. I can also have a handful of flushes. Ace queen, ace 10. Lower left-hand table, we face a 2.5x raise first in from under the gun. And we'll just go ahead and defend that for a call with ace-jack. With the overcaller in there at that small blind player calling as well, I'm going to call tighter, but I am still going to call with the ace-jack. I will check range to the pre-flop raiser on the 4-4-3 board. I'm going to start stabbing at that king that peeled in the turn after no one showed any interest in the hand on the flop. I have the best hand there a decent bit too, but I'm just going to be content picking up that pot a very large percentage of the time by starting to stab at the turn. I'm going to open 10-8 suited from the button in the lower right-hand table. Upper left-hand table will open 8s from middle position. Upper left-hand table, a middle position raises first in. We're sitting in the big blind with pocket kings. Waiting to see what the small blind will do. Folds back around to us. We're going to go ahead and re-raise about a 7.5% range there, fairly tightly from the big blind against the middle position open. Something like 9s or better, ace, king, suited broadways, and a couple suited connectors and suited wheel aces. On the 10-4-3 two-tone board, we're going to go ahead and range bet out small. Lower left-hand table, we're going to go ahead and open ace-10 from the cutoff. Lower left-hand table, we'll open ace-3 from under the gun, ace-3 suited. Get a 6-7-8 rainbow board. I am going to go ahead and range bet that small, even though this is the exact kind of hand in board where you can check back if you want to. I haven't been getting raised by these guys enough to really punish that small bet, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. With having just nothing really going for this hand, he donks it in me for half pot on the turn. I'm going to go ahead and fold that out. Continue with my various pairs, various club draws that I had turned on the turn, or 9x type hands for an open-ended straight draw. Got some full houses and trips as well. Upper left-hand table, we'll open queen-9 suited for middle position. I'm sorry, that's from the cutoff, actually. Blind down blind, the lower left-hand table. King-7 would not be a standard open, but just outside that, we can go ahead and expand our range against a player that hasn't been particularly aggressive thus far in a player pool that's definitely not sufficiently aggressive enough to punish you for raising too light. We will go ahead and check range on the 10-Jack-6 two-tone flop. And I will just fold my king high. No backdoor draws. Blind down blind to that table in the lower left-hand corner, the one we just added, though I think it is also the table we just tried to leave. Facing that 3x raise first in, and 6-5 offsuit's a fine hand to call there. Towards the bottom of our calling range, but a reasonable defense hand in a blind on blind situation. And we face that small 1/3 continuation bet on the flop on a King 7-6 rainbow board. So we'll go ahead and call with our bottom pair. Upper right-hand table, we can complete the small blind with a limper under the gun. We're sitting on Queen 10 offsuit. We will check our range on the 9-8-6 two-tone board. That limping player goes ahead and calls. I'm content to actually check call here with my double gut shot, just because I don't know I'm going to fold this guy out often enough, and at least the jack is so extremely deceptive that I definitely want a chance to keep a weak player in the pot with a lot of money behind us. Upper left-hand table, we'll open King 7 suited from the button. Upper right-hand table, we hit the jack, albeit it's the flush closing turn, but we have the nut non-flush at this point. We get bet into another half-pot bet. I think I want to go ahead and check-raise this guy here, then try to value bet the river as opposed to going any kind of check-call, or check-call, check-raise lines. I think I can actually call twice, especially if I use a reasonable size bet on the river with one pair type hands in a lot of cases. I think he'll let me know if he's got the flush often enough I can get away without losing too much more money as well. Upper left-hand table, we range bet the flop small on Queen 7-4 two-tone, and then on the turn after he calls us, we get a bottom card pairing 4 that puts a double flush draw out there with the diamonds as well as the hearts. I want to keep betting my 7s full, my good 4x, most all of my 4x as a matter of fact. I could probably trap queens full and quads 4. I think I'd also be betting for the most part my overpair type hands and ace queen, king queen. Hand like 7x I want to check back though. It's a very good bluff catcher as well against whiff 5-6 whiffed hearts. And when he checks the river again, I'm just going to take my showdown with my 7. Lower right-hand table, we get called in position after raising from middle position with ace-10 offsuit, and then we get called in position. We check range on the 10-10-4 two-tone. He checks back. On the offsuit deuce, we get our chance to go ahead and start betting with our trips. I think I want to use, I'm trying to decide here. I could bet 4s and 2s full to the extent that I have them. I think I want to be betting lots of flush draws and also lots of overpairs or just pocket pair type hands. I think I want to use a smaller bet size here out of position on this paired board. You can consider overbetting the river if he flat calls me on the turn. Especially there with the quads showing up out there now. Trying to decide if I want to check to induce or value bet this. He flat called in position. He probably has a lot of pocket pair type hands that will call down. I'm going to go ahead and put a pot size bet in here on this trip run out river. I think I can call the stuff like pocket 7s very heavily. Snap calls me. I think he's got a lot of those type of middle pairs in his range, having called in position. He had ace deuce offsuit for pairing up with the bottom card. I'm going to go ahead and open 9-7 suited on that table. I'm also going to go ahead and tag this guy as a recreational player for calling a raise in position with ace deuce offsuit. Not something a thinking regular player would do. We're going to go ahead and defend the big blind against the 3x open from the cutoff in the upper left-hand table. I could consider 3-betting this as well, but I think it's on the close side, especially with this guy having been more passive. I think it's better off to just go ahead and call. We flop top pair, top kicker on 9-5-4 rainbow. We're going to go ahead and check call that 2/3 bet from the in-position player. Lower left-hand table, we check range out of position in the blind battle on 9-8-7, or I'm sorry, on Jack 9-7 two-tone. We have 8-7. Going to go ahead and continue checking our third pair in this spot. I'm going to check it down one more time. I'm going to check my 9 to that in-position player and give him a chance to bluff with whiffed over cards as opposed to try to get value from a weaker pair. I think there's more value in bluff catching here than there is going to be in trying to value bet. If I had peeled the king, I would go ahead and value bet that. Oh, and he had a bottom 2 pair. He could have continued betting on the turn to get some more value, I think. I think he under-repped his hand a little bit. But I think he played it okay. I think betting the turn's probably a little bit better with that hand, though. Get a cutoff raise first in. Well, we're in the small blind. The button also calls. We're a little bit short as well. Ace-Jack is kind of on the cusp of hands I would 3-bet and squeeze with here. Given that there's another player in there, which makes me want to 3-bet ever so slightly less, given that this player has been pretty passive so far, and given I'm a bit on the short side. Being on the short side actually makes this a bit more inclined to go ahead and squeeze with it, as I'm punished less often when I get myself into trouble with it post-flop, or at least less severely with us being a bit shorter. It's also harder for him to call in position. It's pretty close. You could go ahead and fold it pre-flop if you'd prefer as well. But I think trying to re-steal with it's okay, even though it is pretty close. Didn't work this time. We'll just go ahead and fold to the 4-bet. Lower left-hand table, we're going to go ahead and re-raise from the button against the cutoff raise first in with something like a 13.5% range, including our suited broadways like Queen Jack suited. Lower left-hand table, we're going to isolate out of the small blind against that button limper with Jack 9 suited. We get cold 4-bet in the lower left-hand table, and we're sitting on the Queen Jack. It's probably a little bit too light to go ahead and continue with this, so I'm going to go ahead and fold. It's reasonably close. If I thought this guy was wild and aggressive, I could go ahead and flat there, but for the most part, that hand just needs to be folded. And now we've got a little bit more than min raise in position by the big blind over our small blind isolation. We're getting 2.5 to 1, so we have to call with pretty much everything here. We have to be cautious post-flop, though, but that's too good a price to fold pre-flop. Lower left-hand table, we raise the cutoff, and that player that cold 4-bet us, again, 3-bets us this time, now from the small blind versus our cutoff open. Pocket queens is sort of on the cusp of being a 4-bet or a call here. I think I'm probably just going to 4-bet this and get this in. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. 4-bet queens plus and ace-king suited, maybe ace-king off. Could also go either way. We'll check call with the pair of jacks on that monotone flop and that weird blind versus blind, live, raise, re-raise spot. Against the second barrel with the overcard peeling, us having no club, I think it's safer to go ahead and get out of the hand at this point. Lower left-hand table, that player calls our 4-bet. We get a Jack 8-6 two-tone flop in which he checks to us. We're going to go ahead and range bet small, looking to get our pocket queens in here and just hoping he didn't peel trip jacks on the flop with that jack high board. Or I guess he could be trapping with a better overpair as well. But we've got a lot of money in pre-flop with queens. That's a pretty clean flop for us. Really nothing to do but go ahead and just go with this. We're up against Jack 10 with the backdoor flush draw, so we got the money in pretty good. I think he played us a bit too light there out of position. I'm happy with the way that hand played out. Lower right-hand table, we open ace-queen offsuit from the cutoff. Lower right-hand table, we're facing a 3x raise first in from the button. We've got Queen Jack offsuit, and we're planning to go ahead and defend this for a call. Yeah, with the small blind folding, it's a standard call. We'll go ahead and check range on the King Jack 10 rainbow board. Upper right-hand table, we open Queen Jack suited from middle position. Face a half pot continuation bet on the lower right-hand table, so we'll check call with the Queen Jack. We peel trip jacks on the turn, putting a backdoor flush draw out there, and we again check to the razor. Keep barrels again, this time 2/3 on the turn. I think there's really nothing to do but go ahead and continue check calling. There's really no bad river cards for me at this point, and my hand is under-repped and strong enough to bluff catch in a lot of cases as well. Most cases, in fact. Check raising on the turn puts me in a bit of a predicament as he's going to continue with his trip jacks, most of which are either ace jack or full houses, as well as his flop straights and his full houses, with kings or with tens. So I think check raising the turn actually overplays the hand a little bit right there, and it's just going to play a lot better in that check call line. We were against ace-4 that had turned the backdoor flush draw, so he was barely in a gut shot to Broadway on the backdoor flush draw, which is a very reasonable play. They're facing a min open from a short button player who's only got about 28 blinds. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze with the 8s over his min open and the small blind call and just look to get it in against the short stack player. Upper right-hand table, you got a blind on blind situation. Small blind raises first in for 3x. We're going to go ahead and use the king 4 suited as one of our 3-bet hands. Lower right-hand table, 9-8 suited is a hand we can open as a standard from the middle position, though it's kind of on the cusp near the bottom of our range. Upper left-hand table, we'll open Queen Jack offsuit from middle position. Lower right-hand table, we'll go ahead and check range on the Queen 9-5 two-tone board, and we'll range bet on the upper left-hand table 8-4 deuce two-tone board. We will be check calling with middle pair in the backdoor flush draw with the 8-9 hand and checking that king on the turn. Against the check raise on the flop on the upper left-hand table, we'll go ahead and fold out. Let's see. Against the turn bet, I think we can go ahead and fold this. We'd call with 9-10, 9 jacks. I've got the gut shot as well. Upper right-hand table, 5-4-2-3. So we've got the 4 straight with the 6 for the high end of it. We beat anybody sitting on ace high themselves, so we bet out. We want to start getting some money in this pot. Got 2 players that called us. River is the 5 of diamonds, which is not great in that it makes possible flushes and full houses. I think I want to go ahead and use a small size as opposed to an overbet size, given there's not a lot of hands much stronger than my 6. Had I gotten a nice brick, I think I would have overbet to really take advantage of an ace that couldn't lay down there. On this particular spot, I think an ace is going to be a lot more scared with that particular river card that hit and won't call down an overbet, but can pay me off for a smaller bet. Well, it's against another 6 for a chop. Upper left-hand table, blind on blind, will defend the 3x raise first in from the small blind with pocket 2s. And in the lower left-hand table, we have a chance to open 7-5 suited on the button, which is sort of on the cusp of our standard range. We'll go ahead and bring it in. We'll fold to the 2/3 continuation bet on the upper left-hand table with deuces on King Jack 4. Smaller bet size, we could continue for, something like a third pot. Against 2/3 pot, we should be folding there. Lower left-hand table, we face a very small 3-bet from the small blind. At 7-5 suited, for the price we're being given in position, we can normally go ahead and call, but this player is only 15 blinds deep. There's no reason to call with a speculative hand like 7-5 suited against that guy, so we go ahead and fold. Upper left-hand table, we'll open ace-queen on the cutoff, part of our standard 27-ish, 28-ish% range for a cutoff raise first in situation. Big blind goes ahead and pops us up to a small 3-bet, about 3x size. We've got ace-queen. We'll be continuing in some fashion against this. I'm trying to decide what my 4-bet range looks like first and foremost. I think we'll just use ace-queen as the 4-bet to go with kings plus and ace-king suited as the 4-bet hands to call off. Lower left-hand table, blind on blind, will open 10-5 suited. We'll fold ace-queen against the jam, and we'll fold 10-5 against the short stacks. Not jam, but essentially committing re-raise. Upper right-hand table, we'll re-raise the buttons raised first in from our small blind. It's our standard aggressive range in that spot of about 15% of hands, including pocket pairs like pocket eights. We get flatted in position. The flop comes down ace, king, 3. We'll go ahead and range bet small on the flop, mostly shutting down without picking up an 8 on the turn, but perhaps bluffing the river if it checks through, depending on the board texture. We have a tight player in the small blind and a fishy passive player in the big blind. We'll go ahead and open the button light with 7-6 offsuit under those circumstances. Upper left-hand table, get a 2x raised first in from the button. I often would just flat with ace queen for a 2x raised first in, but with a small blind player also in there calling, this hand's going to play much better heads up or taking it down pre-flop. So instead, I'm going to shift that back into the re-raise or squeeze range there. I also don't mind getting this guy heads up on the flop if he calls me as we're already in position and he's shown some somewhat fishy tendencies so far with some limps pre-flop in his range. Upper right-hand table will open ace-king for middle position. Lower right-hand table, we get a suspected recreational player raises first in from the cutoff. We're going to go ahead and re-raise from the button with something like a 13% range, including ace-queen offsuit. And we get 4-bet, nothing really to do with ace-queen, but go ahead and fold that, especially a 4-bet of that size. He goes from 10.5 to 33. I don't even know if I would call anything against that size. I might just be jamming or folding. Ace-queen off is a fold against that. And we've got a middle position raise, button flat. We're in the small blind with pocket tens on the upper left-hand table. We're going to go ahead and re-raise this. So I don't like on the other options. Re-raising is going to be better than flat calling or better than folding for sure. And that player who calls twice on the button, we're going to go ahead and range bet small on the king 4-4 two-tone. Same guy that we 3-bet last orbit deep in the button v small blind spot. He calls. We're going to go ahead and check. I think I would be trapping with my kings full of 4s at this point, give him a chance to hang himself. I think I'd be checking pretty much everything at this point, as I don't want to be betting. I guess aces are pretty safe to bet because there's not too many combos of ace-4 suited as long as I block those. The kings are so strong I can trap. I feel like I'm going to play my range a lot better by checking heavily on this turn, though. River is a jack. Not there's too much sense in trying to value bet that particular card. You know, a 10 I obviously would. I think I would in a king as well to try to get called by weaker pairs. Here I'm content to just try to check down and beat a hand like 8-7s. He had pocket 9s. Got a very tight player in the small blind and a passive fishy player in the big blind, so we will open light with suited 9-4. Big blind calls and checks to us on Jack 8-6 two-tone, so we're going to go ahead and range bet him small. Can pick up draws on various turn cards that'll let us keep putting in money. On the Queen of Spades, I think that's going to be a good one to keep barreling. We have a gut shot with no showdown value. That overcard is liable to scare cards like 8x and 6x hands that called the flop, and maybe even some Jack X. I think I want to be betting a lot of hands on this board, a lot of Queen X type hands. For protection, as it's so drawy now with a possible straight out there and various straight draws as well, a flush draw showing up on the turn. It's also going to set me up to overbet barrel the river if I need to really get aggressive with him here, which I think I do. Yeah, and I think a 2/3 size might get called down a decent bit even by a hand like Jack X, but a 2x size is going to fold out just about everything. So I'm going to use the 2x size here and try to pick up this pot. A hand like Queen 10. I was going to say that's the most reasonable bluff catcher, some kind of Queen high gut shot that paired up on the turn. I'm going to start stabbing at this pot on the turn in the upper left hand table after the flop check through. We defended a min raise in the big blind with the small blind player also out there calling. I don't know that the overbet against a fishy type player folds out even any ace-x, much less any 10x. I'm going to bet with the smaller size so I don't have to get away with this nearly as often. I think I still fold out most of the king x and certainly the higher whiff draws that don't have any showdown value but do beat 4 high. And we got check raised. We could just go ahead and give that one up. Blind down blind, upper left-hand table will open Queen Jack suited. We'll open a little on the loose side on the upper right-hand table with 5-3 suited on the button. Lower right-hand table, we get a button raise first in. We'll go ahead and 3-bet with something like our 15% small blind versus button 3-bet range, including pocket kings. Upper right-hand table, Jack 8-7 monotone. We'll go ahead and range bet small. The imposition player called us in the hand with the kings. We get a 9-5-4 two-tone flop. We're going to go ahead and range bet that flop small. And I'm very happy about getting raised in position as it gives me a chance to go ahead and jam all in over the top with my pocket kings. I think a lot of overpairs like 10s, jacks, and even queens can now feel very good about calling off in this spot. I could also be doing this with some draws, some flush draws and overcards, maybe even a hand like ace-3 type hand with either spades or maybe even diamonds. I think I get a decent number of folds when I jam over the top here too. Oh, and I ran into a top set of nines, which is unfortunate, but part of the game. And we need to go ahead and stab at the river with essentially the nut low in the upper right-hand table after it checks around again. Upper left-hand table is interesting spot in that a 14 blind player opened the button for 3x. He's been playing 7-3-9 over 11 hands. He's probably on the passive side. He probably doesn't fold enough if I jam all in. So I'm not going to do it as weak as a hand like Queen High. If I thought this guy was loose, had a ton of hands in his initial raise first in range, I think I would do it with a hand like Queen Jack. But because he's been so tight, and so passive thus far, or he hasn't been tight, he's been very loose, but he's been very passive. I'm not going to do it with a hand as weak as Queen Jack, thinking I don't pick up enough folds to make it profitable. However, we're not going to get out of his way when he only has 15, 16 blinds deep, even though that he re-raised when we have ace queen. He went from 2 to 4. I'm just going to go ahead and pop him up and get it in against him with ace queen offsuit for the 15, 16 blinds that he's got. I get flat called. We go to the flop with a little less than 5 blinds behind us and a 23, 24 blind pot. We'll just put them all in for the rest of it with our ace queen high. He calls off with pocket queens. Well, so there's probably some reason to think he is actually pretty tight based on what we've seen so far. That he shows up with queens in that spot. But for 16 blinds, I just don't think I can really talk myself out of playing with him for stacks pre-flop with ace queen offsuit. Lower left-hand table will open King 8 suited from middle position. Upper right-hand table will open kings from under the gun. We get both blinds that call us and then check to us on the Ace Jack 10 two-tone flop. Trying to decide if there's any merit in bluffing a gut shot this week. I think I'll check this one back. Upper right-hand table, a small blind 3-bet says we're going to go ahead and 4-bet the call off with kings, aces, ace-king suited, and use ace-queen off as our bluff. And that ace-10 jack, before we get a jack on the turn, and everyone checks to us again, so I'm going to go ahead and start betting it now. We'll call off with the kings against the jam, run into queens. We got our hand in good that time. Pretty happy about that. Lower left-hand table, we have a blind-on-blind situation. We get raised 3x. We're going to go ahead and call with the 7-3 suited. Upper left-hand table, button min raises. We have ace-king offsuits. We'll go ahead and 3-bet this particular hand. Lower left-hand table, we're going to stab half pot with the open-ended straight draw on 8-6-5 two-tone. For left-hand table, we get a king, queen, 7 flop, so we'll go ahead and range bet small. Upper left-hand table will open king, queen offsuit in the cutoff. Lower left-hand table, ace, deuce offsuits, kind of close on the button, and the player in the big blind's been very loose and aggressive thus far, so we're going to go ahead and fold out and not open something that's a little loose, a little on the cusp. Upper left-hand table, we get called in position, and there's an ace-7-5 monotone, or I'm sorry, rainbow board. We'll go ahead and check our range on that. He checks back. We peel a queen that puts a backdoor flush draw out there. We're going to go ahead and continue checking that. He checks back quickly. On the river, we're going to try to go ahead and get value from a hand like 8s, 9s, 10s, something like that. Pocket 6s even. So we're going to go ahead and put in the small size bet with our second pair top kicker. Lower right-hand table, blind on blind. We'll go ahead and defend with the Jack 9 offsuit. Against a half pot bet. We got called by pocket 10s in that king-queen hand. Same upper left-hand table, a recreational player limps under the gun. We'll isolate from middle position with ace-9 suited, using something like our under the gun range. This is kind of close. I don't think I can really float here. Well, it's pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and fold, but I think that Jack-9 hand is tricky to play on a lot of turns. You could certainly call with it if you wanted, though, because there's got overcards and some backdoor straight cards. Lower right-hand table, button raises first in. We can go ahead and 3-bet from the small blind with essentially all of our suited aces against that donk lead for about 60% pot and the min raise by the player that comes next. We're going to go ahead and fold out our ace-9, no backdoor draws. And the fish that led folded very quickly afterwards, which is odd, but for right-hand table, we'll open 4s under the gun. A little on the loose side, but I think it's okay. I'm going to shuffle this table out also, as it's not terribly fishy. Everybody's pretty tight, except for maybe this guy who's a little on the loose side, but 48-29 with 3 bets and no limps. They are baiting me into calling here with this guy over calling behind, and I'm getting about 3-1 with my small pair to go ahead and set hunt, and all these, about 200 blinds deep against both players. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. Go ahead and check range on 7-6-4. Go ahead and put in that check raise with the 4s. He quickly folds. Upper left-hand table, blind on blind. We're just going to go ahead and open with the 4-3 suited. Upper left-hand table will open eights under the gun. Upper left-hand table, you get a 2.5x open from the button. We can go ahead and defend with pretty much all of our ace-x type hands. We'll go ahead and check range on the 8-8-3 two-tone. Upper right-hand table will open kings under the gun. Against that small bet, I want to go ahead and check raise this player on the upper left-hand table. The 9, flush closing 9, I'm going to use the small bet and keep betting him there. Lower left-hand table, I'll open ace-3 is suited on the button. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind, facing a 3x up, and we can defend with offsuit connected cards like 6-5. He checks to us on 10-8-7. I'm going to go ahead and stab with what's essentially a gut shot to the 4 as the 9 puts a 4 straight out there. It's not a true open-ended straight draw. But I just don't know that he's all that strong on 8-7-4. And we should probably take a stab at it at least once on the flop and decide from there. Lower left-hand table will open Jack-9 suited in middle position. Lower right-hand table will open 10-9 suited from under the gun. Against the 3-bet and cold 4-bet, we can just fold out our Jack-9 suited. The 3-better jams quickly over the cold 4-better, who used a small size out of position and then instantly folded versus the jam. Lower left-hand table will raise ace-10 offsuit from under the gun. Lower right-hand table, we faced a 3-bet in position from the button, so we'll go ahead and fold the 10-9. Upper left-hand table, queen-jack suited, we will raise first in from the from middle position. Lower right-hand table, cutoff raises first in. We can defend with king-8 offsuit versus the min raise. Against a larger size, we would just fold that. We check range on the queen-jack-9 board. We face a small 1/3 bet. This is a great hand to actually put into our bluff range to balance our king-10 or 10-8, as we have great removal to the king-10 and 10-8 nut straights. We don't really have the sets, but we're not check raising with sets or two pairs. We're only check raising with straights or straight draws with blockers to the straights. Lower right-hand table, blind on blind, we'll open the king-5 suited. Lower left-hand table, you've got some regular-looking players that have been reasonably aggressive thus far. I'm not going to open that button light. Had it folded to me, the cutoff raised first, then it took the chance away anyway. Lower right-hand table will open blind on blind with the King-8 offsuit. Then check range to the big blind who defended on the Ace-Jack-8 two-tone flop. I'm going to go ahead and bet small with my 8 to try to force out random overcards or at least charge them. Upper left-hand table will open 7s on the cutoff. Small blind player calls. We get a Queen 10-8 two-tone flop. I'm going to go ahead and bet that small. Though probably not fighting too hard for this pot with multiple barrels if he comes along. Can fold out some even smaller pairs like 6s through deuces, which I'm, although admittedly already ahead of, or some ace-high type hands. If you want to split your range on a flop like that, I don't have a major problem with that either. It's probably more solver approved anyway. Get a 3x raise first in, blind on blind. The upper left-hand table will go ahead and defend with the Queen 7 suited. He checks to us on 10-7 deuce. I'm going to go ahead and stab for half pot with my pair of 7s. Mostly just looking to either charge or fold out over cards that have a lot of equity against it. Get check called. Upper right-hand table will open Queen 6 suited from the cutoff. I'm going to check back the turn now, that 4 on the turn. Plan to bluff catch the river for the most part with my 7. River to 2 pair, but that's all right. Upper right-hand table will open Ace-Queen offsuit from middle position. Upper left-hand table, blind on blind, will open Ace-Jack. And we will check range to the big blind on the 6-4-4 two-tone. Upper right-hand table will open pocket kings under the gun. I'm going to keep checking the ace-high against the fish on this low board, thinking my ace-high is probably good, but it really can't get value from worse. Called by 3 players, and kings, both blinds and the button in position. I'm going to go ahead and check range with the players in position to me in the single raise pot. Turn is an ace of diamonds, which gives me an underfull and puts trip aces or flushes and flush draws out there. I'm going to go ahead and start betting this out if it checks to me. When he bets into me there, I think I actually want to raise this up and give myself a chance to get paid heavily off either flushes or trip aces. Go ahead and put in about a 60% raise, about a 3x raise. Can overbet all in on most river cards. 3 of diamonds peels off. I don't think he ever gets away from the queen of diamonds type hand, which he could very conceivably have in his range. He's playing 41-31 over 29 hands. He might also be a bit fishy and more inclined to call down a bit too light. I'm going to use the overbet all in here. For left-hand table, I'll open the button light with the small blind being kind of fishy and the big blind not being too aggressive. get a 2x raise first in from a button that seems to be on the fishy side on the lower right-hand table. We'll defend with all of our suited cards, including Queen 8 suited. We checked range on the Queen Jack Deuce two-tone. He checks back. The turn is a jack, so I'm going to check my weak queen. He checks again. I'm not going to try to induce a bluff from a guy that's quickly checked twice. I think I'm going to try to get called down by an ace-high type hand or some mid-pair. So I'm going to go ahead and value bet my weak queen at this point. Get called quickly. He had pocket nines. For right-hand table, blind on blind, a somewhat fishy small blind player limps. I'm just going to check behind with ace deuce. She could also raise that up. I'm going to check back my weakest ace on the ace-king 4 board when he checks to me. Not looking necessarily get 3 streets with the weak ace, looking to induce from worse hands. I don't really have to worry about protecting it equity against very many holdings. I call the min bet on the turn, that half pot bet, and he checks the river. I'm going to go ahead and just try to get some value from a king or an 8 with a standard, 2/3-ish, 70% type sizing. Got a 3x open on the upper left-hand table from a player that's been very tight. I'm going to go ahead and actually fold my weak suited ace for that 3.5x open against a player that's only raised. That's probably, his second or third time in 100 hands. Yeah, it's his third time in exactly 100 hands raising. There's no reason to think that guy's range is anything but super tight. But blind on blind, we will try to steal from him with 6-5 offsuit as he's been so passive. Upper left-hand table, we're in the cutoff. King 3 suited is probably just outside of standard open, but this guy has been passive and fishy, and the blinds have not been aggressive. In fact, nobody at this table has 3-bet once that I've seen. They've all been here at least 50-some hands, so we can start opening a lot wider on this table if we want. And King 3 suited is pretty close to an open anyway. I will check range on the 5-4 deuce two-tone flop. He bets 2/3 against a player who's been on the passive side and using a larger size. I'm not going to have as many check raise bluffs in my range, so I will just check call with my open ender and overcard here. I will check to him on the 6 that completes my open ender. He continues barreling. This guy also could have a lot of nonsense in his range as he is a fish, so I'm just going to go ahead and go into check call mode here. River is the queen, doesn't complete a flush, not too scared, content to check again and see if he continues to stab. He does not. He had 7-6, so he actually had the pair of sixes with the club on the turn. He probably should have checked that hand back on the turn as it had a smidge of showdown value. But I don't mind him barreling the gut shot and the flush draw on the flop at all. Turn of the lower right-hand table, flop is checked around, and it checks to me again on the turn, so I'm going to start stabbing. And that's 6-6-3, now 2 with the flush draw board. I almost certainly have the best hand there anyway, but we may as well just pick the pot up now when nobody's shown any initiative to go after it yet. 5-3 suited's a little on the loose side to open up, but these guys have been so passive at this table, I'm going to go ahead and experiment with opening a lot looser. I'll check range on that Jack 10-4 board with the player calling me in position, and I will just check fold when the player stabs at it for about a 40% bet. Lower or upper right-hand table, blind on blind, I'll open 6-5 offsuit, especially against a player who's passive, and while he's shorter, he's not that short with 75 blinds. Lower left-hand table, we'll go ahead and open a little on the light side with 8-7 offsuit, but not too bad. Probably just outside the cusp of a standard open. Upper right-hand table will also open a little bit on the light side, but not too bad with 3-4 suited. And that blind bat on the upper left-hand table, we can just go ahead and fold the 8-5 offsuit. Upper right-hand table will range bet small on the Ace-Jack 3 rainbow board. And we will steal blind on blind with 10-3 suited in the upper left-hand table against a player who's fishy but very passive. Lower right-hand table will open 7s on the cutoff. I will check range to him on the Jack or on the 9-6-5 two-tone board. On the turn, when the 8 peels, I'm going to go ahead and bet on the small side here with my gut shot and look to probably bluff the river for about a pot-sized bet. Well, now that the flush came in, but it makes me the straight, I'm going to try to get some value from having the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out there and me holding the 10. I'll go for about a pot-sized bet, thinking these guys can call a lot, just calling for the chop. He calls quickly and pays me off. Regs tend to fold those chop scenarios when you bluff them a lot more than the fish necessarily do. He had pocket threes. He was just definitely calling for the chop. Not even sure why he was calling the turn. The turn call was pretty questionable. But whatever, it worked out for us. Upper left-hand table will open 6-2 suited on the button. Opening very light because, again, these guys have not 3-bet me once and don't want to do anything to stop me from opening light, so I may as well take advantage. We get called by the big blind, and he checks to us on the Ace-6-3 monotone flop, so we will go ahead and range bet small. Upper right-hand table will open King-6 suited from middle position, and upper left-hand table will open 6s from the cutoff. A recreational player calls us in position. We'll go ahead and check range on 10-9-4 rainbow. We got called in position and then squeezed by the small blind with that King-6, so we'll just go ahead and fold. I'm going to keep checking my 6s on that Jack 10-9. I don't really fold out any kind of pair without a lot of effort, and I could still have a lot of hands in his range that I beat. I think he'll also probably let me show down a decent bit of the time, but no sense to do anything but check fold there when he bets. Get a 2.5x open from the button in the upper left-hand table. We can fold a few offsuit aces versus that size. This guy's been a little bit on the passive side so far, so we're going to go ahead and make what's a little bit tight, but I think a reasonable fold. Lower left-hand table facing the 2.5x open. We will, however, defend with the Jack 5 suited. We'll check range to the raising first in player on the King Queen 8 monotone flop. Kind of a fishy player bets out for 75% on the flop. Over here, if we checked in the limper and small blind completer, I'll call at least once with my second pair. I don't love it with a player behind me. I don't think he's going to bluff me out too often, so I think it's okay to call at least once with that second pair. He bets another pretty decent size, given that we also think he might be a recreational type, and we also blocked the best draw in Queen Jack that he could potentially have. I'm going to go ahead and make what might be a slightly tight fold, but I think it's okay to get myself out of trouble there against a possible top pair, of which he flashed King 9. Let's see here. Lower Lower left or upper left-hand table, I'm going to go ahead and start stabbing with my deuces after he checks back the flop. I'll probably be bluffing the river in almost all cases as well. Although when he raises, I think I will just go ahead and fold. Lower right-hand table, I'll open the ace-7 suited on the button. Lower left-hand table, we'll make a loose open with 6-5 offsuit. One player to the table is new, the other player didn't 3-bet at all so far. However, the new player goes ahead and quickly 3-bets, so we'll just go ahead and fold. Upper left-hand table, that recreational player limps. Everyone else folds. We're in the big blind. We're going to go ahead and raise him up with ace-jack offsuit. Upper right-hand table, the under-the-gun player raises first in. We will 3-bet middle position with a tight range, 7.5%, but we will include ace-queen offsuit in that. Upper left-hand table, the player limp calls. We get a king-queen 9 rainbow flop. We'll go ahead and range bet out small. He calls. I don't want to keep barreling a guy like this with the hand as weak as a gut shot, so I'm going to go ahead and check. Upper right-hand table, that player calls the 3-bet and then checks to us on 10-4 deuce rainbow. We will go ahead and range bet that small. The river over here, we've got the ace-queen high. We have to go ahead and really try to bluff this. It's just about my worst possible hand as played. Just try to fold him off some kind of weak pair that beats me. Upper right-hand table, he check calls. We peel a 9 on the turn. I'm just going to go ahead and check that back. I could keep betting if I've got, I could have 10s or 9s. I think I would probably trap the 10s. But barrel the 9s and barrel the overpairs. I would check back a lot of 10x as well, though I would bet some bit. I could also be betting queen-jack and some of those 2 overcards and flush draws, especially the king-queen and king-jack ones that also make a gut shot. Now, when he checks to us twice, I think I want to go ahead and bluff this. I'm going to go ahead and use a more standard sizing. Thought about trying to overbet bluff all in because I could have pocket 10s there as well, but I just don't think that I have enough strong hands to justify doing that, and he snaps me off quickly with ace-king. I guess that's not the worst bluff catcher in the world if you think I've got some kind of overcards there. But I could have the 10s. I could have some 10x type hands that I check back as well. So it's not just going to be pure air type overcards. Lower right-hand table, the cutoff raises first in. We're going to 3-bet a roughly 13.5% range with the ace-10 suited is going to be in that range as a part of that. We get cold 4-bet by the big blind. Just no reason to defend against a player pool that's just not cold 4-bet bluffing all that much. I'm going to continue opening very light at this table just because of all the passive tendencies. And even though he's in position, he's a fish and he can make some mistakes. I want to be in a lot of pots with that guy. But this is a very much not standard open from under the gun. I'm just doing it because this table's been so passive and I've got that fishy player I want to be in the pot with. Going to go ahead and check range on the ace, queen, 6. Monotone board. Upper right-hand table, I'm going to go ahead and open king, jack under the gun. Having peeled that small pair, I'm going to go ahead and bet it out, although I'm going to bet it small, probably bluffing the river in most cases. When that king, jack gets 3-bet in position, I'm just going to go ahead and fold it. I'm going to go ahead and shut the session down here after this orbit and take a little break. Upper left-hand table, we get that recreational player limp, so everyone folds to me. I'm going to isolate him again out of the blinds, this time with ace-jack suited. That's about it. Another tougher session. We ended up winning about a buy-in and a half in cash, but we lost about a half buy-in once we adjusted for the run good on the all-ins. Overall, I felt like I got myself into a lot of bad spots. I don't think I played all that great, but I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found some of it informative in one fashion or another. This is Charlie Murphy, signing off.